Hello again and welcome to another edition of Backyard Farmer. I'm Kim Todd. I'll be your host for the next hour of good gardening. We're still taking those pictures and emails, so if you'd like to submit a question for a future show, our address is byf@unl.edu. We do need to know as much as you can tell us about your question. Please tell us where you live. Remember, we can't answer all those questions on the air. You can search for answers on our social media pages, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and as always, we start with samples. Jody, you have an art display.
Yes, I do. I brought bagworms. So right now is about the time that they are starting to pupate here on the east part of Nebraska. I know that some places will still have moving and feeding caterpillars, and if you can see what's I'm holding, this one, it's a little mean. I've cut the caterpillar's bag apart, and you can see that they're not the most attractive caterpillars. That's probably why they're mostly in a bag, but there it is. So this is a bagworm caterpillar, and most of the time you can only see it looking like one of these things that are on the board. They will feed on the plant and then put pieces of the plant on its body. So sometimes it looks like a pine cone if it's on an evergreen, and these ones are all on I think this one was a honey locust shrub. And you can see that I've kind of dissected them today, so you can see what's inside the bag. So this is what they look like. You can see that there's a lot of silk, and then that's got all the leaves attached, and this is why they can survive the winter, because they're very insulated. This one here, the first two, those are female pupa. So the caterpillar is going to change into a wingless moth. So she actually doesn't leave the bag, and she lays hundreds of eggs, and then that bag just stays in the tree if they're not picked out. The next two are a little bit smaller, and those are male pupa, and so those are gonna actually turn into moths with wings, and they will emerge in October around there, and then mate with the females in the bag. There was a question last week about a pheromone trap for bagworms, and I guess I should have just said online, because you can pretty much get anything online. But what would happen with a pheromone trap is there would be like a female, it would be a synthetic female hormone so that it would attract the males, but it may not be effective for a management strategy right now because many of them have stopped feeding. It's not a good time to treat. So what you want to do is pick those bags off from now until next May, and then decide on treatment after the caterpillars emerge from any bags.
I feel the pain of anybody who has a lot of them in a big tree.
Yeah, and there's been some really neat projects with like Eagle Scouts and stuff. They've been helping seniors pick bags off their trees.
That's pretty cool.
So, yeah.
All right, Bill, you brought a wet paper towel.
Yeah, and some crumbly pieces of paper, right? So, if you're like me, you may have some spots in your lawn that you'd like to seed, and usually you forget about it, and then you're going, oh no, we are right in the middle of the seeding window, and it closes pretty quick, especially in the western and northern parts of Nebraska. So what do? You could go to the store, or you could be lazy like me, and you go dig through your garage, and you have this bag of seed in there, and it could be 2 years old or 8 years old. So the question is, can you still use that seed? And then is there some old fertilizers in the yard? In your garage, can you use that too? So if you're wondering, can you use the seed? It's a real quick way to check this. You can just measure the germination of the seed. So if you look really closely, you'll see those little specks. Those are little bluegrass seeds that I just put into a paper towel, folded it over, you put some water on it. Doesn't have to be soaked, just damp, and then you just throw it into a Ziploc bag and let it sit. And if it's bluegrass, you let it sit for weeks. And if you don't see any little green shoots come up, it's dead. So the seed is still alive when it's in a hot garage. It's still burning sugar. It burns sugar faster, and it dies. And so you don't want to put this out because then you're going to have problems and not have any seed. So at this point, I did this a couple weeks ago. Nothing's here. This seed's bad. I need to go seed. I'll go buy some new fresh seed. So if you're not sure now, as the window's closing, you might need to go buy seed anyways. Then the other part is, okay, I got some fertilizers in my garage. Which one should I use? And so I have 2 labels here from some fertilizers that I found in my garage. One has got a middle number of 3 for phosphorus. One has a middle number of 20. So we want to look for high phosphorus containing fertilizers when we seed because the seed needs that phosphorus. So this would be the fertilizer that I'd want to use for my yard. If it's 20% by weight phosphorus, it means I want to put about 5 pounds of this fertilizer down per 1,000 square feet for that seed to really give it a shot. So unfortunately, I just pulled these from the fertilizer bag, so now I have no idea which bag is which. But that's some of the things you're going to do if you're scrounging through your garage to figure out what to use to fix your lawn.
It'll be interesting to see what you actually get out of that fertilizer next year. Okay, Kyle, you have something you said you've never seen before.
Not in person, only in pictures. And unfortunately, the leaves got a little bit crispy. It's been kind of hot last few days, and I made the mistake of cutting this a few days ago. But I have tar spot of maple here. And so this is a silver maple that has tar spot, and really, as I've said a few times, pathologists are really boring namers, and so they're just these big spots that kind of look like a bit of tar on there. It's caused by a fungal pathogen. There's actually 3 different species of the Rhytisma fungi that can cause this disease, and each of those species has slightly different symptoms, but they all form these kind of larger black lesions that are a little bit raised as well. And so if you kind of rub your finger over them, you can notice, you can feel that they are raised up a little bit. And so this disease actually starts out kind of early June is when infection starts. And it'll start off as just as these light green specks in the leaf. And then mid to late summer, really right about now, when we have plenty of humidity, that's when we'll get these really large, kind of unsightly blotches that occur. Like a lot of our foliar diseases that occur this time of year, not a whole lot to be concerned about. It's purely cosmetic. If you have severe infestation year after year, you may get some early defoliation, which can lead to a general decline. But for the most part, your tree will handle this thing just fine. But as far as control, just sanitation at the end of the year, so making sure that you are raking and destroying those leaves really helps. This is not a fungus that we want to throw in the compost pile, though. If we throw it in the compost bin, there's a good chance that it will not break down over the winter, and that fungus will still be active if you try to use it again next spring.
All right, thank you, Kyle. Jody, you have 5 questions for your very first round, but the first 3 are birch. This first one is a weeping birch, Western Douglas County, 10 to 12 years old, west exposure, subdivision clay. And then your second 2 are from Kearney, and this is a 20-year-old birch. They think it's in serious trouble. They think it has borers. I think the top is out of this one. Puts on something that you pour around the roots of the tree for the borers. So what do you think here?
Okay, so this looks like bronze birch borer, and the weeping birch and the white birch, they're highly susceptible to this borer. So it's a wood-boring beetle. If you look closely, you may see D-shaped exit holes, but this does look like it is in some decline. And usually these native borers will only affect stressed or, something is already wrong with the tree. And then those little, those rows of holes, those are from a sapsucker looking for insects under the bark. So it's pretty
once
far
they
decline.
attack, they're
to try to bring it back with a drench. So that would be really tough.
All right, your next one is also a borer. This is oaks, 3 of them, 25 years old in Martell. And all the way up, they have a handful of these pictures. They're wondering anything about oak borers.
Okay,
what do you think here?
Yeah, there are a couple, and that shape, that D shape, it looks like we call those flat head borers. Very similar shape of the beetle that's the emerald ash borer, so that kind of pen nib kind of bullet shaped, and that's what the hole they make when they emerge because they are developing under the bark. And as I said with the bronze birch borer, these borers get in when the tree is stressed, and so if there are 3 of them close by, they may not just be, have a watering or whatnot. I know that we've had a lot of problem with oaks, but if there are these borers in each of them, it's, time to look at those trees and find out, how healthy they are and if there's anything you can do to increase that vigor, or if they need to be removed, or if they can be treated.
Right, because there's really not much you can do when they're like
Yeah,
this.
if they're already in there, it's going to be tough. It depends on what the rest of the tree looks like, and maybe a certified arborist can help you evaluate that to see if it could be a good candidate for some type of treatment. But if it's low down enough that you can see it, it's probably like a lot of these things start from the top down too, so it's good to
Okay.
know that.
Your last one here is zucchini, and they wonder what the culprit is in the
Ooh,
zucchini.
yeah, so that's a different kind of worm, but it's a moth. It's the squash vine borer, which has ruined a lot of people's squash this summer. They bore into the stem because the moth lays eggs on the stem, and it tunnels on the stem, and they bore through, and they can become over an inch long, these little white caterpillars, and this one just went right into that young fruit. So unfortunately, that's no good.
Little protein in the zucchini. All right, thanks, Jody. Bill, your first question here is an Elkhorn viewer. He has a sod question. He wonders what he can do to get the lawn more level. Should he add a little soil each fall or spring? It was sodded 3 years ago at his fescue, and it was wet when it was put down, so that might be part of the issue here.
Yeah, sometimes you have that, maybe it wasn't graded outright, or it rutted a little bit, and you get these ruts, or if it's new construction and they drive over your driveway or into your lawn. One of the things you can do, besides just ripping it up and reseeding or sodding, is if it isn't too bad, I'd actually recommend using sand. So like at golf courses, sports turf, we put sand down on our grass all the time to help dilute thatch and make the surface firm and flat. That's why greens are so flat, because the sand is getting applied all the time. So if you're wanting to do that and it's not too bad, you can slowly work that up with sand. You can do it all the time as long as the grass is growing. Don't smother it. Dry sand works much better, so it gets in between the leaves. And then as it kind of fills in, you'll have that sand base there, and the grass will be very happy with that little sand cap.
Excellent. All right, and your next one is a Blair viewer, and they said this area has the roots of 2 great big red oaks. You can just barely see them in the back corner there, and then a downspout that pours water on this slope. It's east facing, it's shady. They want to know how to get grass to grow, and if so, what kind.
Yeah, I mean, there's 2 different grasses that could work here. Tall fescue is going to be the one that's going to work best for Nebraska. And so if I was going to try to fix this, you want to do it from sod. So at least you're starting from healthy grass is full of sugar that might persist longer. Seed's never going to really take off. If it's really wet from the downspout, you could do a grass as a weed. For most people, it's called a rough bluegrass. My parents had a very shady lawn, and we actually selected that and grew it. And then when their ash trees in Wisconsin died, their lawn was dead because they didn't have the shade and it wasn't as wet anymore. And so I really, 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 really wouldn't recommend doing that in Nebraska. I don't think it's a good idea, but that would be one grass species. I would rather stick with the tall fescue sod, and if that doesn't last there, mulch it and don't have grass in that area.
All right, thanks, Bill. Couple tomato questions. Imagine that.
Favorite.
Sort of like Jody with her galls. This first one is a Lincoln viewer. They're filled with these little scabs on the skin. Wants to know whether it's safe to eat and why this is happening.
Yeah, so I think this is bacterial canker, and so it's actually it's a soil-borne bacteria that again forms a canker on the main stem. And so if you would pull up that tomato plant and split the stem, you'd probably see some kind of brown discoloration in the center of it, and that's actually that bacterial infection. On the fruit, we get these kind of scabby, almost bird's eye type lesions, and so there will be kind of white, slightly raised lesions with the dark center. Is pretty typical of bacterial canker. It is safe to eat. But as with anytime we have diseased tomatoes, we don't want to do any processing with them, so no canning or anything like that, because the disease can change the pH levels. But if you just want to throw it on, make some bacon and throw it on a sandwich with some lettuce, go ahead.
All right. Your next one comes to us from Gehring. And the question is, of course, is this tomato spotted wilt virus, and what happens with this one?
Yeah, and it's a beautiful picture. At least if you're a pathologist, it's a beautiful picture. And this is tomato spotted wilt, or most likely tomato spotted wilt. This virus can have different symptoms depending on the variety of tomatoes. But generally, we will have these kind of sunken ring spots that occur on the fruit. Again, same with the other one. This one is probably okay to eat, but when we have tomatoes with the virus, especially that have those yellow spots, those yellow spots aren't going to ripen as evenly as the rest of the tomato. So you may cut into it, and there will be some parts that are nice and ripe, and some other parts that are very unripe. So if you like a slightly crunchier tomato, go ahead and eat it. Otherwise, I would probably get rid of it. And again, just probably want to prune those or discard those plants.
All right, thank you, Kyle. Well, many people consider proper pruning techniques and timing to be kind of a mystery. As long as you can master a few of those basic skills, you should be able to properly prune your shrubs and some of those little trees without much effort. However, there is a timing aspect involved. That's what we're going to hear about for our first feature tonight. We talk about how to prune and when to prune on Backyard Farmer a lot, because those are the kinds of questions we get from you. And one of the things we say pretty consistently is do not prune your woody plant material after about the 1st of August. There's some very good reasons for that, because what we're trying to do is get those plants to shut down for the winter months. And when they have to put their energy into instead compartmentalizing or healing a pruning cut, that energy goes that direction instead. Yews are a great example. A lot of people look at their landscape this time of year, they see that there's been a lot of new long growth on it. They don't like the way that looks. They want to go ahead and cut that off right now. And you can actually see the newer growth that emerged on this yew low down. If you make that kind of a cut right now, the shrub could put on that new growth again. Then what happens? Winter comes, whether it comes early or late, that material that shrub just put on is too lush and too green. That's where you get the winter damage or the winter kill. And that may not show up immediately in the winter, but that shows up in the spring. So leave those pruning shears on the ground or in your pocket or in the garage if you're going to be trying to prune evergreens in particular, broadleaf evergreens like boxwood, unless it's an absolute safety issue. The time to prune those is in the spring, and it's late spring so that we don't, again, cause that growth to emerge and then we have a frost that kills it. Well, we say don't do that pruning on the evergreens and the broadleaf evergreens for the rounding over in the new growth. We also say if you have dead or damaged or very, very injured material like the branches on this viburnum, go ahead and take that out. Make sure you make a good pruning cut, but at the same time, if you look at an old shrub or one that's been in the ground a long time, the viburnum's a good example. A lot of lilacs are this way. Have a lot of the big older canes that don't look anything like the newer growth. They don't look vigorous. The leaves are small. There might be a lot of damage on the branch or on the bark from rubbing. You may have a lot of damage at the base, which is potentially from borers. We all want to make things look better. Leaving this particular piece of the shrub right now is a better idea than trying to take it out. So wait until they go dormant. Ideally wait until later in the season unless you clearly have that activity and the death becomes imminent. And certainly don't prune off the flower buds. We don't want to get those calls in April of next year. Why is my lilac looking so strange? Or in May, why did not my lilac or my viburnum bloom? If what you've done is cut off the flower buds. And finally, we don't make pruning cuts on trees if we can possibly avoid it this time of year. The same reasons apply. That tree is going to have that big wound from the pruning cut. Those resources are going into the wound healing as opposed to going into letting the tree shut down for the winter months. So no matter what time of year it is, broken, damaged, or those rubbing twigs and small branches can be pruned, do be mindful of the season and, of course, the plant you're working with. We see an awful lot of damage from poor pruning. All right, Jody, you have yet another big set. It's insect year.
No galls.
No. The first is, found these eggs on the underside of a basil leaf. What kind are they? And this is Marquette, Nebraska.
Okay, so this is an interesting question. Because, like, I don't know, but this is what I think. I'll tell you. Because I don't know for sure. I would probably, put these on my porch in a little, like, butterfly net thing and rear them out. But I think, because this is basil, it may be like Virginian tiger moth. So they'll turn into little yellow woolly bears because they like produce and veggies in the garden. So sometimes they're wandering around. And so I thought
Catch 'em and
that
see.
could be it. Yeah.
All right, your next one is also, all it says is insect eggs, question mark, Hastings. Are these a good one or a bad one?
Well, it depends, but they're really cool. This is a cool picture, and it's really cool that you actually noticed these because I probably wouldn't have. But these are katydid eggs, so they are related to, grasshoppers or crickets, but they're the ones that look like leaves with the long back legs. So it depends if you want to see them or not.
I think they're cool.
I think they're really cool.
All right, then we have some spiders. The first one is from Crete, and she said it jumped, and she's never seen one like this before.
Okay, so this, it looks like a grass spider, but this one is actually called a rabid wolf spider, but it's not rabid, and it shouldn't be super aggressive, but they're really fast. And so, I do believe you. I think that if they get startled, or if you get startled, we kind of jump. But yeah, that's what this is. So, some people may be confused because they do look like the grass spiders that are building those little funnels in the grass and in the shrubs, but the grass spiders will have more prominent spinnerets at their end of their abdomen, and their eye arrangement is different. And so this one was a clear enough picture that I could see the eye arrangement, so that's why it's a wolf spider. But we've got all different kinds of wolf spiders, and it's the eye arrangement that really matters.
Excellent, and your last one here is this guy crawled out from under the petunias, and we have a quarter in that one too. That's a big one.
So and thank you guys for putting these coins in there for scale. And this is another type of wolf spider. We call these like tiger wolf spiders, or they're a lot bigger, but you can see, if you see a big wolf spider, and some people think they look like tarantulas, if it's got that light stripe that goes down the carapace, not the abdomen, the other part, the cephalothorax, it's got a line that goes between the eyes and all the way back. That's how you know it's a tiger wolf spider. But predator, just leave it alone. Sometimes they make burrows in the garden, but they'll take care of a lot of the pests out there.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, so you have a couple that are kind of typical turf. What's the deal? The first one here is West Point. Needs to know what's going on. It's usually green and full. This year it's brown next to green. He does put down 3/4 to an inch of water a week. He thought it was grubs. Did some more grub control. 1 month ago, no improvement. He says it's spreading. What do we think here?
Well, if you're treating for insects, then that's one of the causes. To me it looks dry. And if you're only putting down 3/4 of an inch of water to an inch, normally that's fine. But if you're in a spot that's been getting less rain, and there's some areas of the state that are in some drought, and the grasses are going to be the first places to show drought, that's not enough. So like with the weather we've had recently, with temperatures in the mid-90s, windy, but most importantly, our dew points have been low, right? Our humidity has been really low compared to what it could be in August. And so we're burning through about 1.5 inches of water a week. And so if we're not getting natural rainfall to replenish the soil, it might just be that. So first thing you want to do is just check the soil with like a screwdriver, see how hard it is. If it's hard, it just needs a good deep watering. If it doesn't, then there could be potentially something else going on here. But Kyle, do you have any views on this? It's hard to see from this. And
yeah, it's tough, and I'll get pictures like this kind of all throughout the year, and it's just poor-looking turf. Without a sample, it's next to impossible to tell.
And if you notice he's putting down 3/4 of an inch, and we're losing 1.5 inches, they can only run negative for so long before the soil is just out of water, and then we have problems.
And then once it's stressed, then all these other diseases can come in as well and exacerbate the problem.
All right, so you have another one. This is Lexington, spots in the yard, and that's a chain link fence behind it. So same thing, kind of hard to tell.
Yeah, it's really hard to tell on this one. If it is a disease, this could be more of a disease depending on its location. It's difficult to tell. You just want to run through that checklist. First thing you want to make sure is there water there? Is it too wet or too dry? And solve that problem. If you're still seeing a disease, luckily the forecast is going to be changing here, and so a lot of that should be kind of becoming less problematic. But from this picture, there's not enough I can see from visual symptoms of any kind of a disease to really be able to say what this is with any resolution.
Certainty.
Yeah,
All right, and you have one more that's Lincoln.
Yeah, I did see a little bit of a brown patch on some of the leaves in here. It could also be dollar spot. Again, the disease pressure has dropped down a little bit recently with the humidity being so dry. We were really high disease pressure like two or 3 weeks ago, and I've seen that kind of go down the other way. Kyle's mentioned he has seen some melting out in some of the older bluegrasses. That's a possibility too. It's again a function of it being really hot and stressful, and we're seeing some of the weaker varieties dying out. So the solution here is, if you're seeing this every year, start interseeding with some newer varieties of, say, tall fescue or bluegrass that are going to be more disease resistant, so that you don't have these problems perpetually from year to year.
All right, thanks. Kyle, your first one here is fall red raspberries. This is Hebron. They had over 16 inches of rain in July, clay soil. This happened really fast. What is this?
My guess is probably Phytophthora root rot. So one of our favorites. Anytime we have a lot of moisture, especially in heavy soils, Phytophthora and a lot of our water molds can be very active. And unfortunately, Phytophthora on raspberries can take out a perfectly healthy cane, really just in a couple of days. And often there will be kind of one way to check would be if you would pull the cane up and kind of scrape away the tissue right at the crown. And you should see some kind of red discoloration or almost a red lesion underneath that epidermal tissue right near the crown. That's one way to test for Phytophthora. Unfortunately, not a whole lot that you can do as far as control. You know, there are some products. Ridamil Gold is out there, and that can be applied as a soil drench, but often it's going to be fairly expensive, and unless you're doing some other things to really take care of the moisture issue. So anything you can do to increase drainage will greatly help. If you maybe put those up in a raised bed or something like that, or doing some tiling, anything to take care of that moisture problem should decrease the Phytophthora.
All right. Then you have the bottom leaves of eggplant or squash or something. This is Gehring, and they're all kind of showing this drying up.
Yeah, and so this, to me, looks like downy mildew, and I think I'm certainly not one who should be doing plant ID typically, but I think it's a squash, and this is all over the squash. A lot of the squash that I've seen. And so if we go out in the morning or in periods of high humidity and check underneath the leaves, we should be able to see kind of a spore mass underneath those lesions. And that's one way to confirm that it is downy mildew. This disease, very common this time of year. The spores are blowing through the air. So I wouldn't worry about it too much. Typically, if it shows up a little bit earlier in the season, we want to be thinking about some of our watering issues, and so making sure that we are watering from the base of the plant, avoiding that overhead watering. But then if you're looking at fungicide control, a product that contains copper or chlorothalonil would work to control this one.
All right, and your final one is Seward, and it's the spots on Rudbeckia. Anything to do except ignore it and wait till next year?
Not really. And so this is most likely Septoria leaf spot on Rudbeckia. The Septoria leaf spot starts out kind of reddish purple. Then it's often going to be one side of those leaf spots will be limited by a vein, which we had there. Older lesions do turn kind of silver or gray. Really not much to do right now. Sanitation, so making sure that we are cleaning up those diseased leaves. And then next year, trying to do some moisture management to decrease that leaf wetness period should really help cut down on the amount of Septoria that you have.
All right, thank you. Well, it is time to head out now to our garden where Terry James tells us about the bumper vegetable crop this season and figuring out what worked and what didn't. Let's take a few minutes to see what's happening in the Backyard Farmer Garden.
This week in the Backyard Farmer Garden, we are really enjoying all of our produce. We're at almost 400 pounds that we've collected and donated to local food banks and pantries in the East Campus area, so we're really excited about that. And we just see more and more tomatoes and peppers and all of our produce getting ready to be able to be picked and donated. We're also looking at what we liked this year and what we didn't like this year, color combinations, textures, those kinds of things. Kind of taking some notes about those, how those All-American selections worked and how they didn't work. We're also ready to start doing some clippings to get some new plants started in the greenhouse so that we can propagate them for next fall. So stop by the Backyard Farmer Garden and check out how beautiful it is.
Right now it's time for lightning. Kyle, you're up.
Awesome.
All right. We have several viewers saying the powdery mildew on their peonies is terrible. Can they spray something on it this year to keep it happening from next year?
Nope.
All right. We have a viewer who used a color-enhanced mulch, and all of a sudden all these foamy things appeared. Is that common in that kind of mulch, and what can they do about it?
It probably is just dependent on that type of mulch. I know we will often recommend maybe reflective mulches for to control certain insects, like that spread viruses, but I am not sure about that one.
All right. This is a Trainer, Iowa viewer that has 6-year-old pines, and they're turning brown from the top down. Pretty abrupt spot between the green and the brown.
I would look for some sort of injury that's occurred, or maybe you have winter injury from last year, probably.
All right. We have a person in Grand Island who thinks they have late blight of tomatoes, and is that the same as early blight?
It is not the same. Late blight is caused by a Phytophthora. Early blight is caused by an Alternaria. It's late blight. We tend to get these kind of big lesions, big sunken lesions on the fruit.
All right. Excellent. Nice job. You ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
Okay.
This is a Burchard viewer who said they goofed and forgot to put down any treatment for crabgrass or fertilize this year. Is it too late to do either of those?
Yeah, don't crabgrass, but you can fertilize.
Okay.
So that's fine.
All right.
Yep.
So what is the best fertilizer when overseeding your lawn right now? And that is a Lincoln viewer.
If you're overseeding your lawn, you need a starter fertilizer, bigger middle number at the seed. Soil testing doesn't need to tell you if you need it or not. You just need to put down starter fertilizer whenever you seed.
All right. This is an Oakland viewer who sodded a small area, but the root depth is above the turf next to it by a couple inches, because of the roots of the sod. How do you fix that?
You're gonna have to try to bring in some soil or some sand to try to filter that out, but that's really the only thing you're gonna be able to do. Or you could try to take some aerating, but have to be really, really, really aggressive, and you'd be better off trying to just add some soil to level it off.
All right. Is bluegrass more susceptible to diseases because we are now in a warmer zone than we used to be?
Possibly. If you have more heat and humidity, then there's maybe more favorable. So it's definitely possible.
All right, excellent. You ready, Jody?
Okay, let's go.
Okay, this is an Omaha viewer who wonders how rare are the giant ichneumon wasps?
They're not very rare.
Okay.
They're pretty common.
What are the orange beetle-like insects that are all over the goldenrods right now?
Those are goldenrod soldier beetles.
And are they good guys or bad guys?
They're good guys. They're pollinating beetles.
All right. We have a Sioux City viewer who's found a 2-inch long, sort of shiny black beetle. What could that be?
Ooh, any shape?
A bullet, kind of oval, maybe? Pass?
I don't know. A ground beetle?
-1.
-1.
Okay.
So many beetles in the world.
So coneflowers are drooping and then dropping
like heads are cut off?
Heads are cut off. What is that?
It's the sunflower head clipping weevil. It's a little beetle that clips around an inch under, and they're all like.
And can you do anything about it?
No.
Okay. So that was actually a very quick answer for your very last one.
It's because you're used to me losing all the time. Sorry.
Hey, you won.
I think the worst was you got 2.
No, you got an extra one.
All right. You do get more questions. Oh, plant of the week. Sorry. I forgot. There's no horticulturist, so it's me. So plants of the week are a grass, a big one. This is Dallas Blues switchgrass, which is right here, which is a selection of our native switchgrass, great big blades, as well as these huge seed heads that are just now beginning to open. This is in the Backyard Farmer Garden, so it will be pretty cool eventually when it completely leaves out. And this is Helen's flower, And Helen's flower is in our rain garden. It is one of our natives, and it's obviously in the sunflower family. So beautiful, beautiful in flower right now, and something worth seeing in the backyard farmer garden. And on that note, since I don't get to do that very often, all right, Jody, we have, first off, are these white butterflies something that he should worry about? Finding lots of them.
Oh yeah, they're out everywhere. And as butterflies, they're really pretty. These are cabbage whites. As caterpillars, they're the imported cabbage worm. So if you grow cabbages, they may be a little bit pesty, but the butterflies are beautiful.
All right. So then this particular person in Aurora found this beauty in the iris and wonders, is this the culprit for the fact that she had terrible iris borers?
This is not iris borer. This is a white-lined sphinx moth. It's also known as one of the hummingbird moths. It's a daytime and a nighttime flyer. It's really beautiful. The iris borer is not as pretty, and it's very damaging.
All right. And then your next one is, this is a carnivore, and that insect is really kind of hard to see there, but that little black and white thing, and he's never seen this before. What is it?
So this is similar to the last moth. It's a really large moth. It's called a sphinx moth, but this one is actually quite rare. I've not seen one of these, but it's called a Titan sphinx moth. They're very common in the south, but sometimes they do fly up north.
So that's a good capture.
Yeah, so that one is really cool.
Yeah,
and it's hard to take a picture of because their wings beat so fast.
All right, excellent, thanks. Okay, Bill, your first one here. Oh wait, we forgot one for Jody. This is your fourth one, Jody. So they're wondering what these insects are on the back of this leaf.
Those are aphids. So if you ever see anything small like this on the underside, and you look really closely, they have these two kind of like tubes coming out of their abdomen, even side, and they're cornicles, and those are only on aphids. So look closely for cornicles.
All right, and spray those off with water or do what?
Yeah, you can do that.
Okay.
I don't know what kind of plant that was, so.
Yeah. All right, excellent. All right, now Bill,
Okay.
it's you. So this is Ashland. 3 pics, and they're showing this specimen of this turf. It's been growing larger. Can't nail down what this is. Fast approaching the lawn repair renovation window. What is it?
That's nutsedge.
Yes,
it is really great this year. There's a lot of it, and it really likes thin, weak lawn areas, but it also can still, once you get it, it can even go into healthier lawns, and it grows really fast. Again, the key diagnostic for a sedge, you grab it by the base, you roll it through your fingers, it feels like a triangle. So your traditional grass control, things like crabgrass control herbicides won't work against this. And even if you get a nutsedge product, it's probably very, very most likely not going to work. So what we're trying to do right now is mow it off, or you can pluck it. You can pluck it, that's fine, you're weakening that plant. It's going to overwinter. But the most important thing you can do right now is make maps. Make a map. It sounds silly, but this weed requires that much help. You make a map of wherever it is. Next May, then you go with a herbicide that controls nutsedge, and you spray it in late May and early June, maybe twice. Then you have a chance of maybe killing this guy.
All right. Then we have a person who says, has not seen this one before. It's about 1 foot tall with flat seeds in a globe shape.
Yeah, this is another sedge, but I'm not quite sure which one this is either. And so similar strategies here, trying to pull it. There would be herbicides that could work, but until I know if it's a perennial or an annual, I wouldn't know, if you should do anything about it now. If it's an annual, I wouldn't worry about it. If it's a perennial, you treat for it next year. So, and you do a little more digging to figure out which one that would possibly be.
All right, thanks, Bill. Okay, so your first one here is a Farragut, Iowa viewer.
Okay.
With oaks. Lots of brown leaves on the ends of the branches, does drop those branch ends. They do think the green are cut off by the squirrels, and the brown ones they weren't sure, and it's probably an insect. But it's really the sap leaking out of the trunk that we're wondering about here.
Yeah, so to me, this looks like slime flux. And so slime flux is I guess it's technically a disease, but there are a few different bacteria that are routinely isolated from slime flux like this. but pathogenicity has not really been demonstrated. So really what happens is the bacteria get into the trunk, likely through a wound or some other opening. They feed on the sap, and then as they feed on the sap and multiply, they're respirating. And they are changing, they're increasing the pressure inside of that trunk, and eventually the pressure just gets so high that the sap will kind of run out and ooze out. Nothing that we can really do for it. Luckily, the trees are fairly good at compartmentalizing slime flux, so we don't want to do anything, but I would just keep an eye on this tree. If you are noticing signs of general decline, maybe get an arborist out there to see if it is becoming a problem tree.
All right, and then your next one is actually a West Des Moines viewer with a sweet gum, and it says really only one branch is being attacked like this, but the leaves are stunted, so.
Yeah, I would guess some sort of canker. I wasn't able to find anything that would specifically do this on sweet gum, but anytime we just have one branch that's affected and then we have stunted leaves that aren't doing near as well as the others, just follow that branch back. There's likely going to be some sort of injury or some sort of sunken area where there's a canker, and I would just prune that branch out.
All right, and send us maybe, if you're really worried about it, a picture of the whole tree.
Correct, yeah.
All right, excellent. Okay, so your next one is a Lincoln viewer of one of many. Last year they lost half a clump of an aspen. The leaves turned black, the limbs had little trails, sprayed with an insecticide and trimmed the branches. The other half is being attacked this year, but the foliage looks like this. And there's also ladybug larvae attached to the tree. So this kind of falls on both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah. So to me, this looks like Marsanina leaf spot, very common on aspens towards the end of the season. I have an aspen in my yard, and we're starting to get it as well. Typically, this disease doesn't kill an aspen, though. It doesn't kill a tree. It's just one of those cosmetic issues. So I would almost wonder about maybe a black sooty canker. Does kind of form these almost black stripes on the tree. That's what could be going on. But just a picture of the whole tree that's showing some of those lines on the branch would be helpful.
All right, excellent. Thanks, Kyle. Well, every good gardener knows that if they care for their soil first, they'll have a much better chance at growing anything successfully. As we harvest our plants and do our cleanup, perhaps you might want to consider planting a cover crop this fall to help your soil. Here's Terry James to tell us more.
Each year we're always talking about how to improve your soil. And here in the Backyard Farmer Garden, we do lots of different things. We talk about adding compost, we talk about turning the soil over, removing all of the dead plant material, especially in the vegetable and annual area, and breaking up that soil and allowing winter to be able to do that. But one other way that we in the Backyard Farmer Garden help to improve our soil is we actually use cover crops. Cover crops are a great way to improve soil in multiple different ways. Cover crops are usually a grass, a legume, or a grain. They are usually very quick growing, and you usually put them on the bare soil starting about the mid-August to mid-September. So now that we're starting to kind of remove some of those dead plant materials, some of those zucchinis that the squash vine borer or squash bug have gotten to, that you've removed out of your soil, now would be a great time to think about putting those cover crops in. Cover crops do several things. They help shade the area, so if you have some weed seed in there, they're gonna grow quicker than those weed seed and help keep those weeds down. They're also gonna help retain some water, but one of the best things that they're gonna do is they're gonna send those roots down through that soil, and they're actually gonna help break up some of that soil. They're gonna create air spaces so that you have more water and air filtrate into your soil. Through the winter, they're gonna hold your soil in your garden. Sometimes we have open winters where we don't have a lot of moisture, a lot of snow, so we could have wind or water erosion. Those cover crops are actually gonna hold that soil into your garden, so you have no loss of that really good soil that you have that you've created in your garden. It's also in the spring when you start turning this green manure over, it's going to add nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus, and some micronutrients back into your soil, so that you may need to be using less fertilizers back into your soil. Veggie gardens are really great to be able to do this. Look for really quick, fast growing ones. There are a bunch of seeds out there that have mixes, but look for oats, field peas, garden peas. Some alfalfas are in there. Look for legumes. Legumes are actually gonna fix nitrogen. So now is a great time to try cover crops in your veggie garden. Go out and find some cover crops. Probably find them in your local nursery, or you may need an online source for those. But try them out and see how great your garden's gonna look next spring.
So just keep in mind, if you do take care of that soil, it will take care of you next season, unless it's as bad as the soil at my house, and it's never gonna happen. All right, so I've given up. Mulch is my friend. All right, Jody, this is an Omaha viewer climbing a hackberry tree at work and came down covered with these. What are they?
These are hackberry lace bugs, and that happens. That happens if you're under an oak tree that has lace bugs, but hackberry trees do get, if you actually stop and look at the underside of the leaf, they can be covered with little black specks. This one's an adult, but that's what they are. And sometimes they do probe the skin, like minute pirate bugs, but they're usually not like a biting pest.
All right. Your next one is simply a what is this insect? And this is Crete.
This is a mole cricket.
What? Look at that.
Yeah.
Interesting. And your third one is a Bancroft viewer. They were sitting outside and a little creature came crawling beside the chair.
Yeah. No.
He kind of squished it, but not on purpose.
Well, that's okay. So this is also a type of mole cricket, and so I would say, I mean, if I was doing a pageant, these things win for the ugliest insect when people call me in just to tell me how ugly they are. But I mean, they're an orthopteran, so they're related to grasshoppers and katydids, and they're a type of cricket. But they've got like digging legs, and so if you look at their front legs, they're like bulldozers. And so they're scary to people, and they want to report their ugliness, but they're very cool. They're diggers.
Bulldozers.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Put 'em here.
Bill, this is an Orleans, Nebraska viewer with a question, will tenacity really kill windmill grass? Listed on the label, has it in an iris bed and is wondering whether tenacity will also kill the iris.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Well, it definitely will kill the windmill grass, especially two applications this year. And if you mix it, some K-State research said if you mix it with triclopyr, it even works better. So you would spray it now and then spray it again in like 3 weeks, and it will kill it. The iris, I'm gonna say don't spray the iris. That's an HDPP inhibitor. I don't think would be safe. So read the label, but if you're spraying it, it's supposed to be sprayed on grass or in this type of crop. And so if it's not on the label, you can't do it legally. And so I would try to avoid spraying the iris.
All right. Your next one is an Ashland viewer that has established buffalo grass lawn that's spread over the edges of the sidewalk, and he's wondering if he can take those pieces and root them and put them in the bare spots this time of year.
You would probably need to get some roots established. If you just cut them off and threw them, they may not be able to root. So you probably need some like hormones and some like plant propagation to do that. And so I would say the likelihood of that working is not impossible, but probably not very likely.
All right. Better off to do plugs.
Just buy a plug from his local company that supplies them and plug those guys in. Yeah.
All right. Thanks. Okay, you have a little ID here coming up. Kyle, the first one is this a mushroom / a fungi or slime?
Or a loaf of bread.
This is Omaha.
Yeah, so this is a mushroom that we typically see growing on trees. This is a type of Ganoderma, and so it's one of our polypores. It will form kind of a shelf mushroom typically. Would not be surprised if there's not an old tree stump or something like that underneath there where it's growing from. Yeah, just a cool thing to look at. I wouldn't eat it, but it's not poisonous either.
All right. So your next one is, what is this? They found it in a backyard in Papillion.
Yeah, so these are pretty cool, and I think that this is, and I think our next one as well was the same thing, but this is a stinkhorn egg, and so that white kind of glob there is the actual egg, and then the purple thing around it is the universal veil, and so a lot of our mushrooms do have this universal veil, and that kind of protects the egg when it's in the soil. So
That's really cool.
it is.
And then we have two pictures, and this is an Auburn viewer. She describes it as small white eggs. Broke it open and contained that. She does think it's stinkhorn.
Yep, and yeah, and she is correct. So we have another type of stinkhorn here. These mushrooms are very common, and their names, as they imply, they get pretty stinky. And so these mushrooms, but like I said, they're pretty cool. Those eggs are typically going to be in the top 6 to 8 inches of the soil. But then just over the course of 3 to 4 hours, we may get a mushroom that grows up to 10 inches tall just in a few hours with this mushroom. And then the tip of it is often going to be covered in some sort of slime or something that's pretty odoriferous, and that will attract flies and other insects, and they will land on it and then fly away and help to spread the spores. Typically, you can't really smell them unless you get nice and close to them. However, I have a coworker who has complained about stinkhorns that have taken over his yard, unfortunately, and he can smell them when he opens the door.
Oh my goodness.
And so it's a bit pungent, but really nothing to be worried about. Not a mushroom you want to eat, of course, because they look gross with the ooze and all that stuff. But again, they're not going to be harmful or anything like that. After a couple of days, they'll dry up and just kind of go away.
All right, excellent. And no snakes will not hatch out of them.
No, snakes will not hatch, as Lauren found out a couple of years ago.
That's right. All right. We have announcements, of course, of good things in the gardening world. And our first one is the Bug Squad special exhibit at the Omaha Children's Museum, September 5th. URL on the screen for that one. Our second one is the Grow Big Red virtual learning series continues. Tree planting is the next one. You can see the registration on the screen every Tuesday through September. So we're coming up to the end on that. We have an emerald ash borer online workshop scheduled for September 2nd. go.unl.edu/EAB 2020, and that's the Nebraska Forest Service and Nebraska Extension. And then we have Digging Deeper with Backyard Farmer. You can watch us on Facebook Thursdays at 8 p.m. Backyard Farmer and NET, you follow us on that. We only really have one more of those, so coming down to the end. We have about a minute left, Jody, so you get probably the last question. This person is in Nebraska City, disturbed a colony of what seemed to be bees, stung about a dozen times, followed into the garage and even into the basement. They looked like a honeybee, half as big, acted like yellow jackets, and the colony was under the wood mulch. Didn't leave a stinger, burned for hours, itched for days. What do you think that might have been?
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear that. That sounds terrible. That sounds like yellow jackets to me.
Yeah.
The description, and I've had a lot of people have very you're the only one I know who've been chased into the house. But yeah, that sounds like a yellow jacket problem. They are going to nest underground in abandoned rodent burrows. So if you had like moles or voles or anything like that, they could be nesting under there. That colony will die throughout the winter, so if you can avoid it, I would do that. Otherwise, if you want to do some kind of treatment or call in someone to do a treatment, do that in the evening. And just, be careful, and hopefully you're not allergic.
I had to go 150 yards on a golf fairway with a golf cart, and they chased me, and I got off the cart, and they were still stinging me.
Yeah, they will defend the
It was
nest.
insane.
And right now, the colonies of stinging insects are really large.
All right. Thanks, guys. Bad stories to end this.